Hello, welcome to Gwent. So you guys asked me about the value of the cards. What is the average amount of points you should expect from them, and how it changes based on their color. And we're gonna use the monster faction just to show it, because why not? We love the monsters. And it is true that the power level of the cards went up, especially the bronze power level. It used to be like nearish, like 9ish, maybe like pushing 10ish, but these days it's more like 11 base and pushing way above that sometimes. And we clearly see the example of this 11 base, like Valtant Warrior, 6 damage generated by 3. If it was on the frost to destroy, boosts up by 2. And it is slightly conditional, worth noting, but under the right circumstances, this is easily achievable basically every single time, so this is not really conditional. Again, we see another card, Drowner, move a unit to destroy on its side. If it's an enemy, damage it by 2. The enemy is, if the enemy is under weather, after being moved, damage it by 4 instead. Again, if you have any weather in your deck, Drowner is gonna be an 11. Pretty simple. We have a Fiend as well. If you have any relics in your hand, strengthen yourself by 3. So 8 plus 3. So this is pretty obvious. We got 11 base bronzes. But of course, not all bronzes. Actually, this is another example. Wyvern, damage generated by 3. If you have any Draconids in your hand, strengthen yourself by 2. So this is another 11. Pretty obvious. The base strength, base point of the bronzes is 11. But of course, some of them are more valuable, like Ice Giant. If Frost is anywhere on the board, boosts up by 6. So this is 12, like, hell yeah, this is awesome. This is above average. But it's also more situational. Maybe not more situational, but easier to shut down. Because Frost needs to be present on the board for this to be 12. It's not like, for the Valtant Warrior, the Frost needs to be on the board like at 1 point. You can just hit with the Valtant Warrior. If they remove it, it doesn't matter. First of all, like, if you can even hit like a minion that has like 3 health to get the maximum value out of the Valtant Warrior. But for the Ice Giant, Frost needs to be on the board and stay on the board to get its value. And some minions have less than that. Like this is like a combined 10, but it actually has carryover, which has value in itself. And also has a shield on it, however you might value that. And of course, the value of all the bronzes is like not as easy to tell. Some are trickier. For example, we got Ancient Foglet here. You gotta have Fog on the board first of all, and the Ancient Foglet. That's at least 2 turn setup. And after that, he starts generating 1 a turn. So you need to play. You need to Fog, Ancient Foglet, then at least 3 turns of Fog to make this Ancient Foglet an 11. Is it worth it? In 6 turns, he would be a 12. He would be above average. But first of all, you need to play the Fog, you need to play the Foglet, and of course, if you have any other Ancient Foglets, you might want to set that up as well. So Ancient Foglet, I don't think it's a bad card if you like play like 1 along with your Fog in a long round, but it still could be slow. The Valtant Rider is a little bit faster. You play the Frost, then you play the Valtant Rider, immediately affects the board. The Frost deals 1 more damage, but the Frost tends to overkill, so Valtant Rider is not that exciting. But this is not a faction analysis. This is just like what you can expect from the bronzes. And this is a great example of a unit that like consume a unit from bronze unit from your graveyard. So if you eat a Drowner, then he has average points, average strength. I'm gonna call it strength, doesn't matter. So he's gonna be an 11, which is average. However, he is more situational because you cannot use him unless you have something in your graveyard. and that makes him not as useful, basically useless first round. However, you can set him up even better because we have synergies here. If you play Fiends, these are 11, then you actually can target consume them with the goal, making the goal a 15. And now we see a pretty good combo right here. You can play this for 11, and you can play the goal for 15. So their combination is like easily average 13 strength. So that's pretty sweet. Also, we can have other combos as well. Like, most of the combos are pretty more complex and also rely on other cards as well. Maybe like synergize with other cards as well. So it's kind of hard to just to analyze it by itself. So also, like, let's say like Rot Fiend, we have like 8 strength, and that fish damage all units on the opposite row by 2. Let's just assume that we damage like 3 units for 2. That way, this is on 8, and let's just say we Cyclops it. Then this is a 10 because it kills a Deathfish minion, and it triggers its Death Rattle. So it's gonna be a 10 plus 8, plus we trigger the Death Rattle, so that's gonna be a 6 on top, 3 times 2. So that's a 24, which is 12 average value. Not particularly exciting, but of course the Deathfish effect might be something you wanna use with Cockatrice. Cockatrice, we see that starts out at a base 7, and you need to play, also it's in easy removal range, and you need to play, unless you already have some Deathfish on the board, and you need to play at least 2 to make this break even. And this that is pretty important. So before you like, you gotta play 2 Deathfish minions to make this just average. Maybe slightly worse than average, because you actually have your strength in like just in a boost, and also like the Drowner is actually more valuable than just an 11 because it actually moves into a Vetter, so it has an additional effect on top of that. The point he's generating. And we have these well, these special cards are like a little bit harder to go into, but basically these are the cards that you don't want to have in your opening hand. You want to have it in your deck. So the Arcus is something you want to have in your deck, and if you do a consume, then they just rush out. So you want to have like 5 at most of cards like this on your mulligan list that you don't want to have in your hand ever. And but they give you extra value because they usually get triggered by what you do. So, for example, on the first consume, these Arrakis will rush out, giving you 9 extra value and deck thinning. So that's great, but of course, if you have Arrakis in your opening hand, then you have to spend your mulligan on the Arrakis. Pretty easy. Foglet is somewhat similar. It's 1 strength stronger than an Arrakis. Also comes out with the fog, but also goes away if the fog is removed. So whatever that is worth. Also Harpy, it's also gives you 4, but it's a little bit harder to set up. You need to play a bunch of beasts, 3 beasts, I believe, 3 beasts on the board to trigger a Harpy, and that is trickier. Kind of the Vattenhound works a little bit differently, but it's kind of the same thing. You gotta have the Frost in your deck to work with the Vattenhound. So that's about it. Let's just go to the silver. So we see that the bronze power level is clearly 11. Some go like to 12. Some go to 15, which is pretty good. We can also see that the Vran like Ciliano Harpy combo. This Ciliano Harpy is a 9. Vran is a 6. Combination of them is like 15. Not great, but if you actually eat the eggs, that's gonna be 8. Then we can actually, what did I say? 15, right? Then it's gonna be 23, which is like 15. I mean 11 and a half. So that's still not really great, something to really write home about. But of course, there are some other consume and Deathfish synergies to consider, like the Arrakis. So it might end up worthing. It might just worth it in the end. Anyway, when we get to the silvers, possibly Monster Nest is the best example of why the silvers are like 3 stronger than the bronzes. This is a card that just picks a bronze and makes it 3 stronger. You also have like a great selection of them. And this is one of the better cards to include in your deck, frankly. Because you can just easily play a Drowner for 14. And that's great, because the Drowner actually has extra effect on top of its strength. And that really works. The strength of Mortard or Gravehag is a bit harder to tell. Baya 2. Shadow is easily like a Deathwish minion plus a 4. So we can easily call this if you consider like again an average is an 11, then it's easily like a 15-ish. So we see that like 14, 15 is what you really want. 14 is the average one. More again, really, like this is like the value of these cards is kind of hard to tell. Like it kind of depends on what your opponents are running. It's easier to tell the value of the cards of those cards that just like provide you strength. For example, like Fire Elemental. This used to be a card that I loved to run, and I suppose you can still run it, but it provides you a lot of tokens. That used to be great for the Thunderbolt Potion, but Thunderbolt Potion actually is weaker now. And the silvers used to be like 12, 13 strength. Now they are more like 14, 15 strength. And frankly, Fire Elemental is just not good enough. It's not good enough to be included. Also, you many times run into armor, and you're just gonna waste your damage. And this is just not good enough, sadly. But there's one guy who's good enough. If you're running Frost, he moves 3 enemies to this row on their side, damage them by 2. If that row is affected by Frost, damage them by 3 instead. So actually he's a 15 if you're running Frost. So again, good Frost synergy. Also you can consider Nitra, but like he's like a 12. You gotta consider that does like running like a 5 body along with an also Thunder really worth it if you are running Wild Hunt archetype. And we see that we also have like a premium Imperial Manticore that's like a 12 base, but this is sadly not an indication of what is the base power, what is something you can expect from silvers. This is simply a special card that you might wanna eat with a frog or maybe Katakan. Maybe if you like eat it with a frog, then you can eat it with a Katakan. This is definitely a card you just wanna play it seriously on the board. You just wanna eat it, frankly. And we finally get to the goats of the monster archetype. And the best example right away is Imralit. He's a 9 that hits for 8. So that's 17. We easily see that 11 bronze, 14 silver, 17 gold. That is the average. You can get more. For example, if we play Karantir, we play Karantir right away and we're gonna get 10 value. And in 3 more turns, he's gonna be 16. Is that good enough? That's actually below average. So he needs to actually stick around the board for 5 turns to be worth it, frankly. And Woodland Spirit, not so much. If you have the 1 Foglet in your deck, then he's actually gonna be like a 12. Plus, like, let's just say like 3 more turns on top of that. Actually, like, no. If you have a Foglet, he's actually gonna be a 14 right away, because he's gonna get out, he's gonna be like put 12 bodies, 12 strength worth of bodies on the board, plus gonna hit the opponent for 2. Then in like 3 more turns, he's just gonna do 6 more damage. So it's gonna be like a 20. So Woodland Spirit is still one of the better cards to play, and it's pretty safe to play. But of course, if they remove the fog with a single weather counter, it's actually pretty good for them. And this is another example of a card. Pretty good example. Consume unit with 6 or less power. If there's no eligible, it doesn't really matter. So best case scenario, you eat a 6 strength unit, and that's gonna be a 16-point difference. And you also trigger any consume synergies you may have. That just makes him okay. This is like 17, this is 16 plus consume synergy. This is 16 in 4 turns. And 4 turns is usually what you want to consider. This is 20 in 4 turns with the foglet. Without the foglet it would be only 16, so wouldn't really... If you're running Woodland Spirit, you definitely should have the foglet. Especially considering you only need one. Caretaker is a bit special because you cannot play him for unless you have a really good target. Obviously, if you're like considering like again 11 plus 4 is a 15, that's not the best. If you're taking out the silver, that's gonna be 14 plus 4, and he's on 18, so that's a little bit better. He's a good card. He's a versatile card, but of course this is a bit of an oversimplification, frankly. Gals, I'm not a huge fan of him. Also, Gals is not really good with if you're running Crones, and it's worth noting, if we are already at the monster faction, that Crones didn't change, and because the power level of the silvers went up, Crones actually got weaker. So is it really worth running the Crones? Like, they give you 20 power, but they also take away 2 of your mulligans, and they are not as strong as they once were. You can run them. They're still good, but they are not that impressive anymore. I suppose, like, we might not have that many amazing silvers here. So that decision is definitely up to you. But we're actually getting to the units. Drog is a bit of an iffy one. It's really hard to tell what kind of power you could expect from him. You want to run like for example, Fiend. Fiend on your side works well. Manticore on your side could work well as well. You wanna run high base strength units, and it's best if your opponent has like low base strength units, but you can't really guarantee that unless you are maybe like giving him that. But like, let's just say like your opponent is running like 1 base strength units all the time, and let's just say you're running Fiends, and that way he would be like 18-ish. But that's like pretty optimistic. And also you can't use it right away. But let's just get to the gold cards in the monster collection that actually can go over the 17 easily. All spear tip, in an ideal scenario, actually get to 10 plus hit 5 enemies for 2. Plus boost 2 units for 1. So he actually becomes a 22. Killing him is actually damn hard before he triggers. Moving away a few units could be a solution. Moving away him could be a solution. But most actually unlocking him is a big solution. So he definitely not as strong as he once was. But 22 strength is still nothing... not bad at all. So if you need some kind of a way to deal with rows and you don't really expect locks, because they're not, well, it kind of depends on the meta, but he can be good. But the real superstar here is Succubus. However, she is the riskiest to run, because for base power you place it on your row, and after 2 turns at the start of your turn, move the highest unit on the opposite row to your side. Pretty easy. So if they have like a 7 power minion, only a 7 power, that's gonna be a 14 point swing. Plus 4, 18 points. Right away. That makes her one of the best golds here. But if you're actually talking about the 10 point guy, which is really not that crazy, and you probably put Succubus in if you're fearing some really big dudes. But even if you're talking about the 10 point guy, that's gonna be a 24 point swing. And if you're talking about the real reason you would use Succubus, like the 25 power dudes, then we are talking about the 50 plus point swing. But of course, the problem with Succubus is that she has 4 strength. So as long as your opponent also, she can be locked. So and it takes 2 turns for her to trigger. So she can be shut down. So can she get average 17 power. Hard to say. One for sure, this is a greedy card, but also can pay off big time. And this kind of shows that you can definitely get a lot of power if you're willing to take a risk or just willing to go for some combos. Looks like yeah. Monsters are not the best examples for combos, but like just go to Nilfgaard just for 1 second. That can illustrate this combo. Because like the Infiltrator, it's a 9 power. So we can easily see that and toggles the unit spying token. This is not great. But for example, the Nausicaa Brigade is a 5. Damage the spying unit by 7 if it was destroyed. Strength itself by 4. Okay. So we can see that this could be potentially a 16. But of course, the opponent doesn't play 7 strength spies on his board. So you gotta make that happen. And you gotta make that happen with an Infiltrator. This is a really good example because you can just... well, you can just play this easily. So let's just say your opponent plays a Mangonel, you mark it with the Infiltrator and finish it off with the Nausicaa Brigade. So you can combine their strength in a way and you can just like average it. So this is gonna be a 16, this is gonna be a 9. So they combined did like a 25, and we can see that this is like a 12.5. But of course, if he only hit a 6, it's still gonna be like a 12 average. So this is a good combo. And of course, marking guys as spies can further trigger spy synergies with the Imperial Brigades and Imperial Enforcers. So that is a good example as well. So the value of a card is a little bit hard to tell just by itself, because most of the cards are really synergy based. But you generally want to go for like least 11 value, 14 and 17. So that's it, guys. Tell me what you think, and most importantly, give me some ideas for the next video. So thanks for watching, and see you next time.